Good morning all, and it's always concerning to be the last presenter before morning tea, so I don't want to keep you from coffee and a sugar hit, and so I'll try to make this as interesting as possible. What I'd like to do is talk to you today about the importance of corporate social responsibility within your business. Now, I'm going to use Aspen Medical, the business I co-founded about 12 years ago, as an example, but the models that I'll present to you today will be entirely replicable within your business. The first thing I want to do is just give you a little bit of a background on Aspen so you understand who we are and what we do. So we were founded in 2003, like a lot of founding businesses, in my dining room, with my wife printing out tenders and my daughter hole punching them so we could submit them on time. We are a provider of innovative and guaranteed outsourced healthcare solutions. Now, I should point out that sentence wins the award for the most buzzwords crammed into one sentence. But that's it's all true, and there are critical words in there like guaranteed, because when you're delivering healthcare and when people's lives count, those words count. And we've been very, very sure in making sure that whenever we take on a project, we can deliver on it. And one of the things that we do very differently is that we do solutions. So we roll everything up to produce an outcome desired by our customers, very often without them knowing what that solution will look like. They have a problem, they want to see an answer to it. We work in remote, challenging and under-resourced environments. Now, you may be aware that you might have heard of us working in places like Africa or the Solomon Islands or remote Indigenous communities, but under-resourced healthcare can also happen in the middle of the UK or in Sydney or in Brisbane, and we've done work around all of those areas as well, and I'll cover out some of those. We are now operating in Australasia, the US, Africa, and all across the Middle East and Gulf, and we've got just short of 2,500 staff at the moment. When we started Aspen, what we wanted to achieve was a company that was special, unique, and that people were better off because we were there.
What we didn't want to do was provide just another recruitment company or another logistics company. We wanted to try something new and innovative and kind of try to put it all together as a complete solution. When you start talking with people who work at Aspen, you start to realise that each and every one of them has a different kind of way of approaching a problem. And it's that different approach which is what we wanted. We wanted people to start thinking outside of the box and come up with things that were totally new and totally innovative, and in that way offer a better value proposition to the customer. And I think it's that unusual way of thinking that's made Aspen what it is today.
The people in Aspen are the core of the company. They are absolutely committed to what we deliver. They work in remote, sometimes very isolated locations, always having the patients' and customers' needs at hand, and really, really focus on that delivery. Without them, without their dedication and commitment, Aspen wouldn't survive.
The Solomon Islands contract was really what put Aspen on the map as a can-do company. You know, a company able to deliver complicated services in very remote and challenging environments. We started out as a very, very small company, and now, fortunately, we're an international company, but still with a local focus, and hopefully with an ability to still listen to what our customers are saying, whether they be big or small. And now we have a company that in essence provides the complete on-base support for an entire defence force. That's Army, Navy and Air Force. And I find that very, very satisfying.
My individual highlight is probably several, but one that I know that I'm very proud of is that when Ramos Horta was shot during attempted assassination, he was brought into our hospital. Our team operated on him for over 6 hours, And then after he was saved and recovered, he came back and presented medals, individual medals, to every one of our staff involved. And I think not only did we help shape a nation through making sure that Ramaswater survived that attack, but that each individual member was recognised was a fantastic thing. Aspen has a very strong commitment to corporate social responsibility and a strong sense that we have a responsibility as a company that's been successful from a country that is doing so well in the current economic climate, that we should give something back. So we have the Aspen Foundation, to which we contribute a percentage of all of our profits, where we target health issues in Australia. But we also try to target projects locally that we and our staff can get involved in. And an example of that is a young blind boy out of the Solomon Islands called Jacob, who's in a country that is very, very short of disability care and is in an environment where, to be honest, his future could have been quite dire. We've been able to, in concert with some other charities, support him, to bring him to Australia, to train him, to get him educational material and computers that will support him as he develops. Jacob is now blossoming under that program, wants to learn more so that he can actually set up a school for blind people in the Solomon Islands that will be the first of its kind. And we're very, very proud to be part of that, a small part, but a part of that that can help Jacob realise that dream. So that just gives you a very brief overview of our background. We have 5 key business areas. Our first of those is defence, and you saw that's the area where we initially started, working in the Solomon Islands and then in Timor-Leste, providing complete outsourced healthcare solutions. We then started providing services in Australia at Albury, Puckapunyal, North Queensland, West Australia, and now we provide over 1,100 people filling 880 FTE positions on 53 bases around Australia. We also provide all of the field medical training for everybody who serves in the Middle East. And we've trained over 5,500 defence personnel, as well as everyone else who goes into that theatre. And so that includes reporters, the Australian cricket team, and any visiting personnel who go into Afghanistan. Indigenous areas. This is an area I'm extremely proud of. It's an area that every Australian I know worries about, and we are all concerned, particularly around the health standard of Indigenous people. We've had a contract for several years now, the Remote Area Health Corps, where we've provided over 3,200 health professionals into very remote Indigenous communities across the Territory, delivering over 280 years of healthcare service equivalent into the Territory. And it means that those communities can stay together. They don't have to send everybody out to a major centre if there's any immediate requirement, and they can deliver it on the ground. Next is the resource sector. We are one of the largest providers of healthcare to the resource sector in Australia. We provide all of the healthcare to companies like Origin in Queensland, to Roy Hill in WA, and we have 2 aircraft permanently based at Karratha providing aeromedical evacuation services covering the whole of West Australia, South Australia and the Northern Territory for 8 of the biggest oil and gas companies. Last year alone, we did 220 missions, taking injured people down to Darwin. And so far, in the period of the contract, we've done over 550 missions. Why is that important? Because it means that the Royal Flying Doctor Service and WA Health are not caught up providing healthcare to those companies. We can provide that healthcare, we can rescue those people, and it means that they are able to not place a burden on Australia's community healthcare assets. Public health, term you may not be familiar with, but this is where we support public health contracts. So we've done things like we took over the emergency department at Caboolture Hospital when it fell over. the department had become dysfunctional. We were called in and we were asked to take over the department, recruit all the staff, get it operational, and then hand it back fully operational to Queensland Health. At the end of 2 years, which was the period of the contract, we had recruited the director, recruited all of the staff. We had improved the efficiencies markedly, such that we'd improved throughput by 40%, reduced treatment time by 20%, and reduced waiting time by 50%, and it was the only fully staffed emergency department in Queensland. We've also cleared about 18,000 people off the dental waiting list in New South Wales, 2,000 in the Territory, and about 12,000 people off waiting lists for surgery for orthopaedics and ophthalmic surgery in the UK. And then finally, disaster management and humanitarian assistance. So that covers things like where the government has asked us to deploy into New Guinea to look after the cholera outbreaks, or more recently into Africa to look after the Ebola outbreaks. So how do we connect? We connect in 3 separate areas that are absolutely critical to our operation. The first of these are our key capabilities. We provide whatever is needed for that solution. So we look at what the customer problem is and we say, let's tailor a solution to meet that. Does that mean people, equipment, all of the project management, which could include buildings, pharmaceuticals, consumables, ambulance, aircraft, logistics, catering, accommodation, whatever is needed to clear that problem up. So how we connect all of those things together in a very, very tailored solution is really critical to our customers. The next area of connection relates to our principles, and these really are key areas of success for us. High quality service delivery, excellence in people management, and sound financial management. So just in your heads, picture a Venn diagram, and that sweet spot in the middle where these 3 overlap, every one of our staff have to think that through. So my CFO doesn't get to walk into me and go, I'm not sure we should buy this bit of equipment. We've got a bit up there and it's sort of working okay. That's okay, isn't it? Unless he can answer the quality piece and the piece about excellence in people management, no decision is made. So it doesn't matter whether you're HR, finance, operations, no matter where you are, you have to consider every decision around those 3 principles. And the final area for connection for us is really critical for our staff, and these are our values. So we have 5 values. The pursuit of excellence. So that means that we always have to push ourselves. Even when the customer is happy, we have to be asking, what can we do next? The next is around respect. We all want to be respected. We all, as a company that we work for, want to be respected. We know that our patients deserve that respect. So we try to make sure that's exhibited in every area, whether it's in a meeting internally, whether it's to our customers or it's our patients. Teamwork is absolutely fundamental, and you'll see that in the projects we deliver, and you heard that in the video. Unless we work as a team, we can't succeed. Compassion, not surprising in a healthcare company, but it is really critical because we are always under pressure about time or money or resources, and how you institute that compassion against those patients is important. And the final thing is integrity. Why is integrity important in a business like ours? We work in some very remote, challenging operational sites. That includes countries where they don't have the sort of standards that we would have around governance and governmental controls. A small example, I won't say which particular country, but we're in a country wanting to kick off a private clinic. We're already doing some work and we thought there's an opportunity here for a private clinic. It had been held up in approval through the Foreign Investment Review Board for about 3 months. I went up to visit to find out why, and a local doctor who we worked with, very well regarded, pulled me aside and said, Glenn, we need to have a chat. I said, sure, what is it? And he said, there's 5 people on the Foreign Investment Review Board. They don't need much. It's just 2,000 each and we'll be able to move on. And I said, right, okay. And he said, now, yeah, it's 10,000. You'll make that back in the first week. I said, great. I walked out with my project manager and he said, what do you want me to do? And I said, Absolutely nothing. We will not deliver care here until it's done the right way. It took 6 months and our Foreign Investment Review Board came through without a cent having to be paid. That's critical. And I've drawn the line time and time again, and I will always do so. And it is really hard when you've invested, as we had at that time, over $500,000 in rolling out a centre. But we will not step over that line, and every one of my staff knows it. So, how do we inspire staff? You would think that if you're a healthcare company, that's going to be absolutely easy. Unfortunately, the turnover of staff figures in Australia would say the opposite. Turnover of staff in the healthcare sector in Australia is typically between 20 to 30% higher than the rest of other industries added together. So, how do you inspire staff to make sure they stay and are motivated to deliver great things? We have a very, very strong corporate social responsibility. Why have one? People might say, well, shouldn't you be giving the money to shareholders rather than other people? I have always been a very, very strong believer that business is part of community. We exist within it. That's where we when we're not at work. If we are not engaged with the community, we are not doing our bit to give back, then we're missing the point. We are all privileged to be here. We're privileged to be in this room. We're privileged to have the jobs we have. We've got our health. We're well educated. We've got employment. We all live in countries where there is good governance and good democracy managing how we deliver our work. If we don't give something back after that, we all deserve a slapping. So you have to look at why you are here and what you want to do when you leave. It should be part of your value set. It should be part of what you think about when you think, what will my legacy be when I leave? Let me just come back to that shareholder question. So you say, why wouldn't I give my money to the shareholders rather than a community engagement that excites you? We try to do this through 4 areas. The first of these is the foundation. That's a foundation that we've set up that we put a percentage of all of our shareholder profits into. Shareholders have all agreed. And we pick health areas that are critical to us to fix across Australia that we can have an impact on. The next is corporate sponsorship. So these are donations that we make purely to very, very clear charities that relate to our projects. So we've helped raise advocacy for people with disability in the Solomon Islands, and with a bit of luck, within the next 12 months, the Solomon Islands will be one of the first Pacific Island countries to introduce disability discrimination legislation, cause of the work we've done with them over the last decade. We do match giving at our sites. What that means is that we have 88 sites around Australia, and we say to our staff, the things that the foundation do or the corporation do may not motivate you. So you find what motivates you, what resonates for you. Is it kids' cancer? Is it the RSPCA? Is it the Rare Disease Association? Whatever it is, if it's a registered charity and you raise money for it, we will match it dollar for dollar. And then finally, planned giving. So we have a set of charities linked, including our foundation, that people can donate their money to regularly. As long as it's a registered charity, we'll process that for them free of charge. What we find is that we have, depending on the time, about 15 to 20% of our staff donate every week out of their salary to a registered charity. About another 10% make donations once a year. I come back to the shareholder question. Why would a shareholder want you to give money away to a registered charity? We have 50% lower turnover than the health industry across Australia. I've got 2,500 staff. 50% less than about 13%, which is the healthcare average for turnover of staff. And if you go by recent figures, it's about $70,000 every time you turn over a staff member. Our return on investment for shareholders is huge. It's in double digits because we turn over staff at half the rate than every other healthcare provider in the country. So we're part of community, we're doing good, and what we've done is engage and activated our staff around the very areas that you heard Cliff mention this morning. What is their social conscience? What is motivating them? Why are they coming into work? Yeah, they want a salary, but they want much more than that. They want somewhere they're proud to be. This does it. So, what do we do to transform? So, we take those people who've got that connection, we take all of those areas that we connect together around people, equipment and solutions. We take those staff that we've inspired, both through the type of work we do and our CSR program, and it allows us to develop and to deliver projects that a lot of people would say are impossible. So how we use those CSR and those clear values are really, really critical, because we've got 2,500 people working in 10 countries on 3 continents around the world. Some of those areas, like Liberia or Sierra Leone or the Solomons or Papua New Guinea, can be really, really difficult to get to. So our CSR values and our very, very clear values that I went through before act as a true north for all of our staff. And I'll give a very small example. We had a doctor, an anaesthetist from Europe, who'd done a lot of work for us on a range of projects. He got very ill at short notice. He was in Europe with his wife, who'd also done work for us over the Christmas break, and unfortunately he passed away. Because I was out of contact, I didn't find out till about 3 days later. I rang my general manager of operations and said, right, there's a few things we're going to have to do. And he said, well, let me just run through what I've already done. And I went, okay, crack on. What have you done? And he said, well, I found 2 of our guys who are on holidays overseas. One's in Spain, one's in England. I'm flying them into Germany for the funeral. I've spoken to his wife. She would like a donation made to prostate cancer charity in Germany. We've organised that, and we've sent a bunch of flowers to the home. And I went, right, tick, tick, tick. Guess I'm redundant, because they had done everything I wanted to. What was great was they'd made a commitment. They'd committed to spend the money based on the way that they knew that Aspen operated. The decisions they made were perfectly aligned with our values, and they were very comfortable to spend that money knowing that that's exactly what Aspen would do. And they had no doubt that this was the right way to operate for our staff. So we have a highly motivated workforce. I've never once asked a person to work late. And that includes running tenders in the middle of the night. That includes dispatching people to foreign countries. That includes when there was a riot in the Solomon Islands, and it was that riot that you saw, buildings burn. Over the half of the city had been burnt. And we said to people, anyone who wants to come out, there's a plane coming in tomorrow, 36 staff on the ground, please get on that plane and come home. Not only did we not have one person want to come home, we had 5 people volunteer to go in to support the team because they knew we would have extra surgical and primary care requirements. That sort of level of motivation out of staff is just gold. To say that we're flexible to customer requirements would be an understatement. In 12 years, and this year over $300 million worth of business, we've never been able to deliver the same solution to 2 customers. God, I wish we could. It'd be so much easier than having to sit down with a whiteboard at the beginning of every contract and work out how they look. But it is a bit fun, I've got to tell you. When someone says, is there any way that you can do this? Could you please roll out into Timor in the next 54 hours an additional surgical capacity with all the equipment, 3 emergency resus beds and 25 staff? And we said, sure. 7 o'clock at night, rang everybody. We all got into the office. We developed a solution by midnight. We'd started ringing people. Things were going so well that the next day I thought, things are in hand. I think I'll go to the rugby. So I'm off driving to the rugby, and I get a call and said, You know how we wanted you in place by 8 in the morning on Saturday because they were doing a particular operation, military operation? I said, yes. Said, we need to change the time. I said, that'd be great. Give us a bit of chance to do some scenario testing. Yeah, we need to pull it 6 hours earlier. I said, you realise that out of a 54-hour schedule, I'm down to 18 hours. You'd like to bring it down to 12. I said, thank heavens, you know exactly what I need. Give me a call when you're done. So sadly, didn't get to the rugby that day. Turn around, drive back in, and we started working out how were we going to cut 6 hours out of an 18-hour program. And what we did was we liaised with Darwin Airport. We actually had aircraft landing where we walked people who were flying in international flights across the tarmac to be met by customs at the bottom of the stairs, cleared, processed out of the country to get onto the next flight to Timor. We set up. We were there with 5 minutes to go. We called and said, we're operational, and the helicopters took off on the mission. I've got to tell you, that was fun. And what we do around offering improvements that benefit all means that everybody wins. Our staff wins, we win, and our customers win. We don't need to own contracts for life. We get them working, make them fixed, and then they act as our referee going forward. So, a little case study. Last year, we were asked to set up the Ebola clinic in Sierra Leone. This was one of the most challenging projects that we'd been delivered. The only reason it worked was because we had excellent people who made a commitment, far more than any company could ever ask of them. Since we rolled out in December, we've had 216 admissions. We've had 120 non-Ebola survivors. We've had 36 Ebola survivors. They've had 73 Australians working with over 250 locals that we recruited and trained and have now left them with all of those capabilities in country. And a key element for me, absolutely fundamental from day one, we have had 0 infections in our team. Why is that so important? If you look at the history of this Ebola crisis across all of the healthcare workers in all of the countries that have treated it, on average, 20% infection rate. And we've had 0. We set up a training centre in Canberra. We put everybody through that training and we said to everyone, if you are uncomfortable, step away now. And that's fine. You can leave with dignity and we don't mind. We then did another 3-day session in Sierra Leone, followed by 7 days working with a buddy in an Ebola treatment centre. We went out of our way to minimise risk because I did not want to have one staff member infected. So, Dr. Gerard here was our lead doctor for the entire facility. And he said this, and he's talking about Freetown in Sierra Leone, was the worst affected city in the worst affected country in the worst ever epidemic of the most lethal communicable disease known. So not prone to overstatement, our doctor. But I've been over there and I can tell you it is hard. This is a third world country that's just had the hell kicked out of it. And so is Liberia and so is the Ivory Coast and Guinea. And luckily, Australia made a great commitment. So that image that sits behind there is of the survivors wall. So what happens after someone has been treated and they're cleared, they're through what's called a freedom shower, which is a chlorine water shower. Their clothes are destroyed. We have to burn them. They're given fresh clothes. We have a social worker who's engaged with their family and they're met outside the facility as they're released. We take them to the survivors wall, put their hand in paint, they put it up on the wall and they sign it. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask that this be put up. I didn't even think of it. Our staff thought of it. Our staff put it up because they wanted a personal record of every single person they saved. And they reduced the infection rate of Ebola and the death rate in our facility from 95% down to just on 50%. And to give you an idea of the schedule we worked on, 5th of November for the Prime Minister's announcement, 9th of November we had the very, very first people on the ground that weekend. 28th of November, our clinical team deployed. We were operational on the 14th of December, and our very first survivor, a young girl who'd lost both her parents, a brother and a sister, was recovered, discharged, and met by her grandparents who we'd gone and found and brought to the clinic. So, in summary, we connect with our staff through a very, very clear vision and set of principles. Our strong values, including our CSR, inspire our staff and get them to do things you could never ask of them, that you could never write in a duty statement, and you could never sit in front of someone and say, you need to do that. They push themselves to deliver way beyond what we ever ask. That trust we have in our staff allows us to transform how we deliver healthcare and allows us to deliver what many other people think is impossible. The power of CSR, the power of values, and the power of clarity allow us to do what not only no other company in Australia can do, but what very few companies in the world can deliver. Thank you.